I mean, the 10 Commandments, folks, are really the 10 great freedoms that God has given us. Where the 10 Commandments are lived out, folks, you have great freedom. Thou shalt not kill. Where that is lived out, you don't have to worry about walking down a dark street at night. Thou shalt not steal. That's a great freedom. Where that is lived out, you don't have to worry whether you lock your car out there. You don't have to worry whether you lock your house when you left this morning. The 10 Commandments are really the 10 great freedoms. You see, true freedom comes from the Creator. And please understand, if you reject the 10 Commandments and say that there is no God, that there are no moral absolutes, and this is what's happening in our society. Please understand this. The blue states argue very strongly that there is no God, man is simply an animal, that there are no moral absolutes. Understand, if that is your position, then you have only 3 choices as to the basis of morality. And sadly, many people in society have never thought through the logical implications of what they're advocating. Because if you say there is no God, if you say there is no moral absolute, please understand you only have 3 choices as to what determines morality. Either, number 1, you have a dictatorship determines what is right and wrong. And understand, Adolf Hitler killed 6 million Jews, and it was right and it was good. Why? Because Adolf Hitler was the moral absolute of Germany. If there is no higher moral value than the dictator, then how are you ever going to judge whether it's right or wrong or not? The only other alternative you have is anarchy. Everybody determines their own morality, and in our postmodern generation, this is where many people are today. In our postmodern generation, we say that everybody has their own truth. Everybody determines morality for themselves. I mean, who are you to be so intolerant that you would say that it's wrong for me to drive through a red light? If my values and my choice is to drive through a red light, I mean, who are you to say that's wrong? Why would you be so intolerant to say I couldn't do that? If I want to commit a drive-by shooting, and that's my value, and that's my choice, I mean, who are you to impose your values on me? Well, if you go to that place, you have nothing but anarchy. Everybody does their own thing, and you have absolute anarchy in a society. So you come to the third choice. If you say there is no God, folks, you only have 3 choices. And this is what is happening in America. The only alternative is a 51% majority of society determines what is right and wrong. Well, America right now is almost evenly divided 50-50 between red and blue states. And the question is, 51% majority will determine what is right and wrong in our society if you say there is no God. The question comes, where does that 51% majority get their values from? And how are they going to determine their values, the 51% who want to impose their value system? You see, this is the real cultural divide. Will 51% of America determine that man is an animal, as they are pushing in our schools? Or will 51% of America say that man is a unique creation of a loving Creator? To put it simply, folks, do you believe that a frog turning into a prince is a nursery fairy tale? Or do you believe that a frog turning into a prince is science? That's the divide in America, in the simplest terms. It's very interesting. When I grew up in Southern California, when I was 5 years old, I grew up in Long Beach, California. When I went to kindergarten, do you know that when I was in kindergarten, they told me that a frog turning into a prince was a nursery fairy tale? But you want to know something? When I got to the University of California, you know what they told me? They told me that a frog turning into a prince was science. You know, we've really gotten smart. We've really gotten smart. And the tragedy is that evolution is a 19th century theory that has been totally destroyed by 20th century science and is now being exposed in the 21st century like the emperor with no clothes. It's interesting, you may have read the statements by Anthony Flew in December. Anthony Flew, who is the world-renowned atheist. When anybody quotes an atheist, they quote Anthony Flew. He is recognized worldwide as the leading atheist thinker in the world. Professor at Reading and Cambridge Universities in England, has recently been teaching at the University of Toronto in Canada. He's now 81 years of age. And this past December, Anthony Flew admitted that based upon the DNA evidence, the scientific evidence from the DNA studies, he said the evidence is so overwhelming now that and the complexity of DNA is so complex that there must be an intelligent creator, an intelligent designer, that you simply cannot explain it by evolution. I was speaking in Poland. I had been invited just before the fall of communism in 1988 by Campus Crusade for Christ to speak on the scientific evidence for creation at the University of Warsaw and Krakow and Poznań in Poland. And it's always an interesting topic to speak on in a communist country where evolution is the mantra of the Communist Party. I'll never forget, after one of my lectures there at the University of Poznań on the East German border, a graduate student in engineering and physics came up to me. He said, "Dr. Carlson," he said, "I don't care what you say." He says, "I'm still going to believe in evolution." So I rolled up my shirt sleeve that day and I showed him my wristwatch. I said, "You see this watch here?" Went down to a junkyard, found some old rusty bent up twisted pieces of iron and metal, and I threw them into a shoebox and I just started shaking it. Shook it for 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, 8 months, kept shaking it. All of a sudden, blam, all the pieces flew together. Started ticking off 60 seconds a minute, 60 minutes an hour, 24 hours a day, telling the day and date, all by chance. Amazing. This graduate student in engineering laughed at me. He said, "That's impossible." I said, "You mean to tell me that this watch by chance is impossible? And yet you'll tell me that this eye which sees in 3D in color, this brain that is greater than any computer on earth, a 3-pound brain that has 120 billion cells, 130 trillion electronic chemical connections, is all product of chance?